OK, let's talk more about Theresa May's target to cut carbon emissions to net zero by 2050. Amy Mount is head of Greener UK for the Green Alliance, and James Woodhousen is Professor of Forecasting and Innovation at London South Bank University. Probably doing a bit of forecasting right now there, James. So let's start with Amy. And so we've got the aspiration from Theresa May to get it down to nothing. Britain's UK's carbon emissions by 2050. That's the aspiration. What about the follow-through? There has to be, one would imagine, almost a revolution then.
It's a hugely historic moment, getting rid of all, committing to end all the UK's contribution to climate change by 2050. So that's a real positive legacy for Theresa May to be proud of, and something that...
But she said it. It's what I'm talking about is the doing of it. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, well, she's left a big to-do list for her successor, and there's two main components to that, I would say. The first one is about putting the policies in place that are going to get the UK on track to meeting this commitment, which we absolutely must do, if not go further.
OK, so what are they? I mean, we must have some of them in place already.
Yep, emissions are coming down, but we've got to build on that success and drive it much faster. So we're seeing, for example, a huge increase in the amount of renewable capacity on the grid. That's been a real industrial success story with the growth of the offshore wind industry, thousands of new jobs, and we need to be opening up the routes to market much more for solar, but also in other sectors as well, investing in resource efficiency for our industries, insulating homes.
OK. So do you think it can be done, Professor Woodhousen, if I can disturb you from your study? Do you think it can be done?
Well, I'm doing a bit of research,
okay,
and I think research and development is the key thing here. And what I'm reading in the newspapers is that Anne Hidalgo, if I pronounce it right, Mayor of Paris, and 17 other mayors have said that we've got to cut our consumption of meat by 80% and that we should only buy 3 new bits of clothing a year.
Yeah, but I mean, there was other things in there as well, wasn't it? Get rid of parking spaces, plant trees in cities. I mean, a lot of the policies aren't going to be popular with people. How do you get the public on side?
Well, I'm all in favour of planting 90 million trees a year, according to the science director of the Royal Botanic Gardens in today's paper. I'm all in favour of that. Can't be done in cities, but we've got plenty of space in Britain. I think when you're asking people to cut back on their consumption, then you're really asking for austerity. And I don't believe that that will be popular. I don't think it will be possible because the resistance will grow to it. And, you know, artificial meat might be a technological way forward, but I'm much more interested in genetically modified or genetically edited trees and plants that can grow fast, store a lot of carbon in their roots, and
OK, so work on the technology
yeah,
side.
that's very much it.
Let me ask you about that then, Amy. You know, the public's appetite for changes to lifestyle and indeed perhaps an economic hit. We did some Sky Data polling today. You know, people seem very unwilling to see perhaps public spending cut to be diverted to this issue, and certainly not borrowing going up for it either.
Let's be clear what we're talking about here. We're talking about policies that are going to make people's lives better. We're talking about getting rid of petrol and diesel cars by it needs to be 2030 and replacing them with much cleaner alternatives like electric vehicles and more public transport. That's going to clean up the air in our cities. We're talking about insulating houses so that they're more comfortable to live in. And we're talking about investment in the economy to create the exciting new industries and jobs of the future. So I don't think we should look at this as a zero-sum game. Yes, the government needs to spend money, but it's an investment. It's not just money that'll fizzle away somewhere. It's about making the UK economy fit for the 21st century and give it a competitive edge. It's really interesting to see that businesses are so supportive of this target. So Carolyn Fairbairn from the CBI has said business stands squarely behind this. They are reading the writing on the wall. This is not just where the UK is going to be going, it's where the rest of the world
that's the point,
and needs
isn't it?
to be going.
I mean, whatever the UK does, even if we went back to the Stone Age, oh no, they still lit a few fires, didn't they? But even if nothing came out of the UK, well then, given the tiny proportion globally that the UK is responsible for. This has to be an example, doesn't it, for the rest of the world?
No, I don't buy that.
No, okay,
you know, I think the idea of us setting an example to the Chinese in the current climate, when they are ahead of us and America on nearly all energy technologies, is just quite ridiculous. I've never heard a sort of vanity contest for, you know, who can be the most hubristic about Britain setting these targets for 30, 40 years down the track. And there'll be no recessions, Dermot. There'll be no, no crashes ever again. It's all going to be done, and we won't have to tighten our belts.
What's hubristic, though, is pretending climate change will just go away and we don't need to do anything.
Who did
and
that?
Governments don't need to take any action.
No, I do believe in action. I already made the point that with plants, with trees, we could talk about the atmospheric CO2 and whether there are ways of capturing it. I mentioned already artificial meat. There are many technological solutions, but I think that too much of the green agenda is all about changing our lifestyles to go back to a sort of feudal way of life, and I don't buy it.
That's not at all what anyone's talking about.
Would growth take a hit? And what happens if there is a recession? I mean, then people are going to say, well, you know, I'm losing my job. I'm not really going to.
The Committee on Climate Change, an extremely authoritative body that is looked up to and in some cases replicated around the world, has done the analysis on this. They have shown that the cost to investing, it's about 1 to 2% of GDP by 2050. That's an investment. These are the new industries that we need.
I know where you're going here. So there's an investment, but you know, you prime the pump and you get more out in the end.
Well, Amy talked about, you know, ending diesel and petrol cars in 2030. I think what you're talking about is ending the sales of new ones. If you want to totally take out the diesel and petrol base of this country's transport system, you're talking way beyond 2050. And I think there's a whole sort of beauty contest here, Dermot, of who the Extinction Rebellion, Committee on Climate Change, who can declare the most ambitious target without paying any attention to any of the details. Okay. Bring them on, I say, to electric cars, but it's not going to happen overnight.
OK, well, we'll bring you back, both of you back on to debate further. Amy Mount, James Woodhouse, and very good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. And time now for a look at the weather.